That was Tony Waterman reporting. Let's get more now from Ariel Ruiz Soto. He's a policy analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, and he joins me from Sacramento, California. Ariel, let's talk about the ordeal, a harrowing journey, if you will, many of these migrants go through to get here for a better life in the United States. Are they fleeing for political reasons or for economic reasons?
Well, it is a long journey, especially one that ends in such tragic death that I think really raises the consciousness not just of policymakers but of the general public. And the idea for many migrants, in this case, many of them were from Mexico, but included some Central Americans, the idea of these migrants tends to be about going to the United States, seeking better opportunities for economic improvement, economic stability. Some plan to stay in the United States for short periods of time, others want to reunite with family. And there is a notable component and share of them who actually travel because of persecution from gangs, violence, domestic violence as well, and more recently climate change. So unfortunately, in this 1,000 miles long journey for many of the migrants that were found in this vehicle, the outcome was not what they wished for, and instead actually ended up in a very tragic scenario with many children and what we would assume families dying in such a terrible way.
A terrible way indeed. What is going to happen to some of these survivors who are recovering in the hospital, among them children? What's going to happen to them once they're released from the hospital?
There's two possibilities. One of them, which I think many advocates for immigrants are trying to recommend, is that DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, considers these survivors as a possible witnesses of a crime, which would allow them to give a visa protection and for them to testify against the perpetrators of this crime, so they actually are able to stay in the United States. The other possibility, of course, is that after they're screened and given proper health care in the United States, that they will be placed in removal proceedings and potentially be returned to Mexico or Central America, depending on which country they came from. I think we're going to see how the Biden administration handles this and see if there's an opportunity for them to receive some protection, even if temporary, while they are in the United States.
What is your take, Ariel, on how the Biden administration has handled this illegal migration crisis, especially along the U.S. Mexico border? We heard from Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, who blamed President Biden for not being tough enough on migration. Your take?
Well, in reality, trying to manage the U.S. Mexico border is actually a significant challenge for any administration. Here, what we've seen is that the Biden administration has tried to open up new pathways for protection that clearly have not been enough yet. There also recently in the Summit of the Americas in early June, the Biden administration promised increasing access for legal opportunities for migrants to come through those options for work, for example, with visas. That would be some of that, that would relieve some of those potential pressures for migrants to use irregular routes. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to not just pressures from moving forward on policies in the United States, but also just a significant lack of opportunity in general in the region that many migrants have. So while we can think that there's still a lot to be done, the Biden administration has at least pointed to a positive direction in how to make this opportunity and this management better. We will see if again after this tragic incident they'll be doing more to actually help people on the ground on both sides of the border, the Mexican side with the Mexican government, with corporation, and the United States with better and more transparent asylum processing, for example.
So is there a way to stop the horrors and the tragedy that unfolds when these human smugglers conduct these kinds of operations for money? Is there a way to stop them?
Well, the clearest way that I think actually the Mexican government has actually coordinated this with the United States has some promise, and that is to try to break up the smuggler network's economic base by looking at where they're funding their resources, what banks they're doing, trying to target that way, so that you're really disrupting their economic model, not just arresting one or a few people, but you're actually going after the valuable assets that they hold in Mexico and also other parts of Central America. So that would be an opportunity to do it. But again, unless there's more opportunities for migrants to come through regularly that are affordable, that are accessible for these migrants, there's always going to be some migrants that are going to have no other option, or at least see no other option than to hire a smuggler, whether it's from Central America or Mexico, to try to enter the United States. There's just a lot of demand for labor and for opportunity as well in the United States that I think is difficult to overcome from even among one president administration.
I think you're right. We'll have to leave it there. Ariel Ruiz Soto, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now to Ukraine, where 18 people have been confirmed dead. Dozens remain missing after a Russian missile strike on a crowded